there's no way that the Lakers would go out and sign Jared Dudley and not sign Carmelo Anthony.
Well, let me not say get Kawhi, announcing Kawhi. We're all waiting for Kawhi's decision. I was sitting there chilling, and I got a notification from Woj saying that they signed Jared Dudley.
When Jared Dudley got in your face in the third quarter, what did you make of the whole incident?
I mean, first of all, he's a nobody, so...
Jared Dudley plays the exact same positions that Melo plays. He's 6'7". Never been in basketball shape, always been a little fugly, chubby dude.
Kenny Atkinson going to his bench.
The guy who looks like everyone's uncle who just gets drunk all day and just comes to your house hungry saying, hey, do you guys have food? I was just in the neighborhood.
How the is Jared Dudley in the NBA and Jeremy Lin is not?
Get the fuck out of here, man.
Really, Jared Dudley?
If anybody watching this thinks that Jared Dudley can hold Carmelo's jockstrap, I'll slap.
There was a time when Jared Dudley was cool. There was a time when Dudley was seen as a potential-filled young up-and-comer that was drafted in the first round and headed to a team that had minutes and opportunities to spare. But most importantly, there was also a time when Dudley could rock cornrows with nobody batting an eye. And if that doesn't scream cool, I don't know what does. But all of that was 13 years ago. The NBA fans of today can barely remember a year as far back as 2007, the year in which Dudley was drafted. Some weren't even born. And the only Jared they'll ever remember is this one, the one riding the bench, starting fights for no reason, and being brutally out of shape. And I feel like I'm almost framing this as if Dudley was some sort of forgotten NBA star that has simply fallen off and has evolved into a joke. And although that second part may be correct, I can't say that Dudley's career was anything to write home about. But if anything, this man was good. He ranks 8th in Suns history in three-pointers made and averaged 24 minutes a game in the playoffs for Phoenix in a year in which they reached the conference finals. He was a pivotal role player for over a decade. He's played over 20,000 minutes, and it's only one of 11 guys left in his draft class that are still in the league. And this is what he gets in return. All this, and Dudley is rewarded with the label of the worst player the NBA has to offer. Maybe it's just me, but at first glance, Dudley doesn't really check off all of the boxes to fit such an insulting label so perfectly. First off, he had a career, a legitimate one that continues on to this day. He's no scrub. Secondly, Dudley fits the mold of a likable player. He's tough and unfiltered, always getting himself into scuffles and trash-talking incidents. He doesn't back down to anybody. And in a league where we really can't trust that these celebrity basketball players are being true to themselves, there was never that kind of doubt with someone like Jared. But I hear you saying, maybe role players should just shut up. Maybe that's not their job. Except it's been countless role players' jobs to do this exact thing. You remember Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, or newer guys like Tony Allen or Patrick Beverley? Yes, all these guys are critiqued and mocked for their passionate antics, but there's also another side of the argument. They're always there to respond, and also always there to uplift them to heights that they themselves would probably say they don't deserve. At the video, every time I thought I had an answer to the hate train that follows Jared Dudley everywhere he goes, I could find an example of another NBA player fitting the exact same mold as him and receiving drastically different treatment. And in this case, Brian Scalabrine was the name that first came to my mind when I first thought up of this possibility that Dudley is treated the way that he is because of his looks. At first, I thought the comparison was uncanny. Both of these guys were old, fat, and normal looking when they reached the peak of their relevancy. Scal was a real NBA player when he played for the New Jersey Nets, but you remember him sporting green and white on the bench of a few Boston squads. Similarly, Jared Dudley's role with the Steve Nash Suns has almost gone completely forgotten, and he will retire with a legacy of being that fat dude who shouldn't have ever been on the Lakers in the first place. But there were differences between these two, because just because you fit the mold of the type of guy thousands of NBA fans would grow to ironically love on the outside, how you handle this reality on the inside is an entirely different beast. Scal was lovable. He embraced the fact that NBA fans had chosen to give him attention over any other random bench warmer. When he got on the court, he smiled. What he didn't do was go out and talk trash to one of the best best young talents in the NBA.
If anything, I should have got him worse.
And most importantly, what he didn't do was call out Kobe Bryant and Carmelo Anthony for being guys that the rest of the NBA hates and are secretly fortunate to not be teammates with.
Asked about Kobe, he said, quote, "Most guys don't want to play with Kobe. That's why I think it'll be a while for the Lakers to get good because they've got no stars." Dudley also didn't bite his tongue when talking about another one of the league's top players, Carmelo Anthony, calling him the most overrated star in the game. So I think it's safe to assume that Dudley won't be joining the Lakers anytime in the near future.
Yes, this is Jared Dudley, a certified bench warmer that is all of a sudden coming at the best in the league. It's weird. Essentially, you just can't have the best of both worlds. You can't be that fun-loving, out-of-shape, normal guy-looking vet while simultaneously playing the role of the tough guy. He had all the pieces to become the next Scalabrine, but couldn't allow his ego to drop to a level that would have allowed him to embrace his downfall from a real NBA player to what is now just a joke one. And that is something about Brian Scalabrine that goes under the radar and something we should legitimately appreciate. Someone who's been cool, the man, their whole lives. And to have the kind of humility that Scalabrine had, to fall down and embrace being a joke, that takes a lot. And Jared Dudley and his refusal to do this, it shows how hard it can be. But as much as I hate to say it, at the end of the day, all of this might have turned out to have been irrelevant. Sure, Dudley rejected the possibility of becoming that next Scal figure, but he was far from hated at this point. His unwillingness to accept such a humiliating role was justifiable. This is a man who has been the coolest guy in the world for his entire life. He was the man in high school and college, was a 6'7" sniper for some great Suns teams, and had been appearing to end off his career as nothing more than a respectable vet that served as a strong mentor to guys like Giannis, Blake Griffin, Devin Booker, and the young backcourt duo in Washington consisting of John Wall and Bradley Beal. At this point in the story, Dudley was forgettable, just another player on just another team. It was the beginning of this season, and for reasons that were completely out of his control, that he became the poster boy for what it meant to be a bad NBA player. This year was the year in which his name became the first one most basketball fans would say if they were asked who's the worst basketball player in the league. Because last offseason, Dudley became less of a basketball player and more of a figure of sorts. His name was thrown into conversation not to talk about him, but to use him almost like a prop. They used him to prove a point that inherently insulted his own ability. At this point, you probably all know exactly what I'm talking about, but for those that don't, well, I'm referring back to the Carmelo Anthony incident. Just about a year or so ago, Carmelo Anthony was jobless, and he'd been jobless for a very long time. Nearly an entire year had gone by since his underwhelming stint with the Rockets. The situation was both frustrating and confusing, and rumors even arose claiming the league was intentionally blackballing him from ever playing again. It eventually became the common opinion to think that Melo would indeed never get another shot at playing NBA basketball. And because of this, there needed to be somebody to blame, because there always has to be someone to blame for some reason. And of course, Jared Dudley was ripe for picking. For months, casual fans, NBA journalists in heavy air quotes, and even pro basketball players themselves not just campaigned to get Melo back into the league, but they also felt the need to bring Jared Dudley into the conversation, as well as use him as I said before, a prop in their argument. They would say, why is Dudley signed to a team but not Melo? That was the classic phrase we heard for months. And I'm not going to sit here and act like there's no validity to this argument. Melo is a surefire Hall of Famer that can still play at a decently high level, while Dudley simply can't. But that's not what we're trying to get at here. What I really want to know is why Dudley? Why was he the one used to put all the blame on? How come we chose him specifically to be the league's scapegoat when this one? You need to be good before you are considered bad. That is it. There are tons of irrelevant players in this league that have played 6 games and their career was over after that. But you can't just have a mob of casual fans give attention to a guy that sure was terrible for NBA standards, but didn't make a name for himself at all. How is anyone supposed to care about a guy like that? those first 12 years of legitimate success, they have done more to contribute to this hate train than this actual season in and of itself, because this season in and of itself is irrelevant. If Dudley was a one-year player and this was that 1 year he played, no one would care about him. So it's fascinating that we're gonna remember him in a Lakers jersey, in a Nets jersey at the tail end of his career, but the whole reason that they're relevant right now is because they were something before they were nothing. Those first 12 years put a man like him on the map, and even when there's a guy like Devontae Cacok on his own team that is indisputably worse than him, Cacok can happily hide off in the shadows and enjoy his short little NBA run, while Dudley will continue to see rotten tomatoes come hurling his way. A look at any NBA player the NBA world has universally labeled the worst player at some time. Brian Scalabrine had an 11-year career and was a mildly progressive NBA player, being one of the first bigs to actually give a shot at shooting threes. Glenn Big Baby Davis was considered the 7th or 8th man for a championship team, and was arguably, albeit for a very short period of time, the best player on the Magic. Anthony Bennett is a bit more of a unique case, but he too had to gain national attention first to be handed this label, no matter how undeserving of said label he was. And that's the big thing that puts this all together: national attention. Whether it be obtained through past successes, the way it has for Dudley, through being drafted way too high in the case of Bennett, or just through having some sort of embarrassing lowlight that actually made your name relevant for a little bit, in the cases of guys like Brandon Knight or Sam Decker. But I focused this video around Jared Dudley for Brian Scalabrine got signed by the Bulls in 2011 over Kobe. Nobody's going to care that you're an overweight redhead. The love for Kobe isn't just greater, but it's actually real love. It's unironic, it's meaningful. At that point, the power would simply be out of Scal's hands, and give up and stop trying and let the other team win. This isn't how things work, and it never will be, and we should be thankful for that. It never should be the way things work. So yeah, that's my conclusion, and in turn, that's the video. I always found it fascinating how quick we are to dehumanize players that aren't considered elite, and the whole Melo debacle last year was just something I had to talk about. I tell you all to stop this kind of behavior and just let Dudley live, but I kind of just don't care what you do with this. If you want to be a casual, be one. The NBA fandom needs casuals. I just hope that we can refrain from personal attacks or public shaming. Keep it to yourself, your circle, and remember that there's literally no difference in talking bad about Dudley behind his back as there is in talking bad about your parents behind their backs. At the end of the day, at its core, when we boil everything down, everyone's just a person. And with that, we conclude this video. I have some more content you can check out over here on screen, and don't forget to support the channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, just do all that good stuff. I really appreciate everything. Thank you all. I spent forever making a documentary about Damian Lillard's famous shot to send the Thunder home in the 2019 playoffs, so if you want to check that one out and more, here it is. Thank you all for watching. Stay safe out there.